Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Conversations That Matter. So with me, I've got Dr Maja with me, and we are going to talk about being an imposter. So thank you for joining me this morning, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So lovely to see you again. And I'm excited about this conversation.
The reason why I'm smiling when I said that, because we were just having a discussion before we started recording. So my first question, which I think is going to explain why I was smiling when I said that, is if we're thinking about how we define imposterism, could you define it for me, just to give people a background of what we were just talking about? Because I called it imposter syndrome, and then you shared with me something really interesting. So yeah, could you tell everyone that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a very basic definition that kind of encapsulates it, and then we can talk about why I think it's not a syndrome. So in a nutshell, we can say that imposterism, if we just coin it as imposterism, is seen as this very persistent psychological kind of entrenched set of beliefs about yourself, how you don't deserve your achievements, and it also involves attributing success to luck or chance or something else rather than your true competence. I think you also asked me how it differs from self-doubt. Doubt to me is kind of a lesser thing of an imposterism because it's very temporary and it can motivate us to change or learn or prepare. For instance, if I doubted myself yesterday in terms of something that I wrote in a psychological report, and I was like, let me check the research. Can I, if I had to stand in court of justice, would I be able to defend it? Right? So that then motivates me to learn, to prepare, to change, correct my mistakes, own my mistakes, development. Right? But imposterism can be more entrenched and more pervasive. Even that, imposterism feelings, they come and go. They are not with us all the time. And again, we'll kind of touch on it later on. Initially, the term that was used when it was first introduced in psychological research by two American psychologists, Clance and Imes, the word phenomenon was used. So when you think about a phenomenon, it's more like weather, right? It comes and goes. It's nothing permanent. A word syndrome actually implies almost like a psychological disorder. Yet when we open DSM-5, which is a diagnostic manual of mental health disorders, it's not there, right? So it's not really a syndrome. So when it was first coined, those two psychologists, they studied high-achieving women, and they realized that these women hold the belief that they were not bright or that they have somehow fooled people, and hence they would be found out. So this idea, I will be found out, truly there yet, right? And this was despite the objective evidence of their academic and professional achievement. Can you see the difference? Imposter truly is somebody who fakes, who pretends to be something that they are not. Whilst people who have imposterism feelings or suffer with imposter phenomenon, they have those fleeting feelings that come and go when they feel like they are not good enough or they will be found out, even though they are highly achieved, highly educated. So it really kind of hits those kind of people. So, like I said, this word syndrome has never been initially used. Somehow, I don't know, over the years it has changed into a syndrome, and nowadays everyone uses the word syndrome. So sometimes I use it as well, but I just want to say that it's not really. And it's not any kind of personality flaw. It's not a failing on my part, your part, or anyone's part. And actually, if you think about statistics, they are quite shocking. Of human beings experience those feelings. So it's hardly anything unusual. So I wouldn't call it a syndrome or disorder, definitely not. As I think phenomenon is much more accurate because, like I said, you can think about it as a weather front. It comes and goes. So we can think about when it comes if you want to think about that.
I really, really like that because I think that, I've definitely called it a syndrome, like 100%. That would be the language that I've chosen, but how you just explained it, it feels nicer to call it a phenomenon, to kind of see it as a weather, because you're right that I definitely experience feelings of it, but they come and go. Sometimes it feels almost like a thunderstorm coming in, and sometimes it's a light drizzle.
Yeah, that's right. And in some situations you won't experience it at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really interesting to think about, when in your life do you experience those things? For most people, it's when they are doing something new, challenging, maybe new environment, but also when they really care about something, right?
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't experience imposterism, I don't know, when I'm brushing my teeth. It's when we do something that really, really matters. So if I give you a personal example, a few weeks ago, I was doing a webinar on behalf of organization that I really care about. I work a lot with performing artists, so this was a kind of training delivered on behalf of British Association for Performing Arts Medicine, and it was delivered to Healthy Conservatoires Network. So imagine there were a lot of professors from all around different kind of conservatoires in the UK, and it mattered to me deeply. And I wanted to be seen as professional, right? And I wanted to do a good job. So I felt imposterism feelings I was thinking about how you and I met as well. We both were teaching on postgraduate diploma in CBT, right? And I remember when I joined the team and for the first time I was teaching certain lectures, I was like feeling like an imposter. I have no idea. I was given lecture slides and I knew about the disorders, I knew about the treatment plans, but when you are teaching, you are trying to make it right and you care about your students. So imposterism really showed up for me. But after a while, I've done those lectures year on year. It became familiar and not that I stopped caring, I still cared. But it was much easier because it was well rehearsed. It wasn't anything novel or challenging. So I think those two things, novel and challenging, are really important to think about.
Yeah, because I would agree that, when I started lecturing, definitely, I was just like, gosh, like, do I know in all of those? And you're trying to deliver it, but you've got all this internal dialogue going on. Like, am I doing this right? Did I explain that well enough? But you're still trying to talk while you've got that going on in your head.
You could think about it as a new hat. You are wearing a new hat. You know clinically the stuff, but now you are teaching it. And you present it as a university lecturer, so there is much more riding on it, right? So it is kind of about deeply caring, thinking about our professionalism, thinking about how we show up in those settings.
And would there be signs that someone is experiencing imposter feelings?
You tell me what are your signs?
I think what I was just saying there is that really busy brain. Sometimes maybe, I think we differ in terms of preparation, whereas you really like to prepare and I'll read things, but sometimes there's a trust in myself. I don't know if that's, I don't know where that's probably something else that's going on.
Interesting that you are saying this, There is another fascinating bit of research by Valerie Young on different types of imposterism. And that's exactly what you are talking about, right? So according to her, there are 5 different types of imposterism. And I definitely, as you named it correctly, called the expert. So until I've read like 10 books on imposter syndrome, I don't feel like I can talk about imposter syndrome. When I work with performing artists, I see them like if they haven't, I don't know, listened to 50 different versions of a recording of a song or something, they will not sing it or they will not, so it's like this, no matter how much I read, how much I study, I still feel like, but I haven't read this book or I haven't read this article. So I do over-prepare because I suffer mainly from this kind of type of imposter syndrome, which we call the expert, which is all about over-preparation. There are people who will under-prepare, and maybe that's you. Maybe you can recognize yourself in Valerie Young's type, which is called the natural genius.
See, that makes me feel uncomfortable, that label.
But listen, it's really interesting to think about it. When I work with performing artists, I see that a lot. So if you hold this belief that I'm talented, I have this natural talent, and therefore everything should come easily to me. And then, the first few things that you learn in your maybe musical journey or as an actor or whatever, everything comes fairly easily, right? Those first pieces or first monologues are fairly easy, usually to do. And then the difficulty keeps going up. So what happens? At some point, you start hitting the difficulty, which requires a lot of preparation. There is no way around it. But if you hold this belief everything should come naturally to me. And suddenly you hit a difficulty. Instead of thinking, okay, it's a challenge, I need to practice more, I need to try more, you can just withhold, you can avoid, you can stop going to auditions or hide and not practice in front of other people. So that's what I'm seeing in performing artists. I'm not saying that you have it. I'm not here to diagnose you or myself, although I have diagnosed myself with imposterism for sure. But yeah, what I want to say, there are 5 different types, and on my website, I've created an interactive quiz, really fun to do. So it takes 5 minutes to fill in the questions online, and then it throws the type that you might be experiencing. And then I created a YouTube video series on those different 5 types, so you can go and look at the video, which also gives you an exercise that is useful for this particular type. So, speaking of a particular type, I also shared with you today that in the spirit of experimenting, doing behavioral experiment on myself, but also due to the lack of time, I haven't over-prepared for this interview today. So let's see how it goes. But it's fascinating, there isn't just one type of imposter phenomenon. There are 5 that are well researched, perhaps more, but that's what we know for now.
I'm definitely going to go and do that quiz.
Because I think I'll send you the link so you can link in the notes and
I'll put that in the notes as well. But I think
I've made it kind of more relevant to performing artists, but we all perform. Like when we are lecturing, we perform. When we are writing reports, we perform. We perform in different areas of our lives.
Yeah. Just to reflect on that, because I don't think I hold that belief about kind of things will come easy, because I've always had to work quite hard. However, that when things get difficult for me, so when I was doing my thesis, for some reason I decided to do a meta-analysis. And when I was doing that, like I spoke to you about it, the avoidance, like I started baking bread. I'd never baked before in my life. And I decided I'm just going to start baking because I can't figure out the kind of the codes for that. And I was...
Yeah, it's a self-protective mechanism, right?
Yeah.
And even though that maybe the name for this type is not the most fortunate, the natural genius, but that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, because that felt really uncomfortable. But I think, I never knew there was 5 types. So definitely put that in the comments, because I think that'd be really useful for people. And we've spoken about ourselves and performing artists. And you also mentioned in terms of when the research was first started, it was looking at high achieving women. Is there a particular group or type of person that is more likely to experience those feelings?
Okay, so everyone experiences it fleetingly, as we said, like a thunderstorm. But it is very heavily concentrated among high-achieving individuals.
Okay, yeah.
Professional women. And it also links to another area of research, which indicates that it's much more highly concentrated among underrepresented and marginalized groups. And also people who navigate kind of major life or career transitions. We've already mentioned the context when we started lecturing. This also started showing up for me when I'm doing expert witness work, because even though I've been doing it for a couple of years, you sometimes get challenging cases or challenging barristers to work with, and, it can evoke your imposterism. So it can affect anyone, but there are specific patterns that can emerge, and they are based on social pressures and also personality types. So when we think about those people who are underrepresented or marginalized, I'll give you an example. I had this wonderful conversation a long time ago with a black opera singer who has an amazing career now. But when she was telling me how when she was 12, she was the only black girl in our neighborhood, because she used to live where I live now. And everyone was like, are you crazy? You can't be an opera singer. And if you think about it, how many black Caribbean or black African opera singers do you know? Probably not that many. So she had to really fight for it. You have to, I don't want to say you have to struggle, but it's not easy, and I don't know, if you are the only woman on a C-suite board or, on a board of directors of some organization, that would also evoke feelings of imposterism. So it's when we are kind of singled out, or when our peers kind of come from a different background. I remember when my daughter joined one of the prestigious specialist music schools, and she went there on a scholarship. The first few months were difficult, she compared herself in a way, they come from this often privileged background. A lot of young people there did, and she was mixed race, again, less common there. But it kind of evokes feelings, I don't belong here, I have to work harder, do I deserve it, am I good enough, and all of that. So definitely that as well. It makes it harder for people who somehow appear different to the context in which they are trying to succeed, and also personal experiences in life. So I'm just thinking, what can I give you as an example, but maybe my personal example.
Okay.
The pattern that I have developed early in my life was to kind of independence and competence my way through things. So you see, I had a mother who was quite critical. Her love was quite conditional on academic success. So I developed a thought, you can't count on others. You have to do everything really, really well and on your own. Okay. So if I didn't get top grades, I would be criticized by my mother and I would start feeling shame. So A minus wasn't good enough, and B would be an utter disaster. So I very quickly internalized this criticism, and then obviously I didn't need my mother to criticize me. I would do it very well myself. Okay, so I did develop this very critical part of myself, self-critical part. And now I call her a mean Maya. So I kind of externalized that part of myself. And I want to say, her job was always to protect me from criticism of my mother, right? It's just a shame that later on I started beating my mother to all this criticism. So the motivation of the part that I developed was really admirable. It was to protect me and to motivate me, right?
Yeah.
And the motivation was so that I don't fail, or I work hard and achieve everything I want to achieve. Yeah. So I want to say the motivation's almost always good, but the execution can be quite harmful. Does it make sense?
Yeah, and it made me think that when I was doing my A levels, my dad had a thing about that getting a C was a bad grade. So my psychology teacher, and I've still got the note somewhere, she wrote a little note to him saying C is not a bad grade, and then signed it, and then I went home and gave it to him. But it's just funny that it almost kind of felt like he was doing it in jest, but I internalized that of being like, oh, I can't get a C because he thinks it's a bad grade. Like in reality, I know I've still passed, but yeah, that was something that kind of felt more in jest, but I still internalized that as something that, I can't get a C because then he's going to be disappointed in me.
Yeah. And of course, you as a young person, you are much more vulnerable and you internalize all those things. I'm actually fighting with my daughter now. She's doing A levels. She's nearly at the end of them. And the school is applying a lot of pressure, but she has already auditioned for all the conservatoires and got offers everywhere. And the condition is to get an E because it's a performing degree, right?
Yeah.
You need to pass your A levels, but you don't need like for Oxford or Cambridge if you want to be a scientist. You don't need an A or triple A. You just need to pass your A levels. And she was like saying, oh, I can't get a C, a bit like you. And I'm like, why not? You can get a D. You can get an E. I don't care. Because that doesn't matter for your future. Obviously, I'm not encouraging her to do badly, but I'm just kind of widening her perspective. And you don't have to take on everything what the school says, because the school is more about the league tables than
what she wants to do kind of moving forward.
And moving forward, it doesn't matter for her. So it's interesting.
And you spoke about like that externalization, and also you mentioned like the behavioral experiments at the beginning. Are there any practical strategies that you would say are useful for, I know it's going to be different for everyone, but would there be anything that you think would be useful for people to think about to manage or challenge their imposter thoughts?
Absolutely. There is actually plenty that we can do. And I mentioned this one thing about me, Maya, haven't I?
Yeah.
So this is one of the techniques when you name a part of you that is doing that thing for you. And in my case, this is a younger part that developed as a result of my home environment. And I'm hearing your dad was a bit similar like that, C is not a good grade, right? So what I now do is this technique, a distancing technique, when I name the part. And you can make it fun. So my name starts with M, Maja. So I use the adjective that starts with M. That's why it's mean Maja. It can be whatever you want, but I call her mean Maja. And when I'm starting self-criticizing myself, I just say, mean Maja is here. And I say, cool off. I've got it. I'm an adult.
Yeah. See, I call mine Miss Trunchbull.
I will hear her for a little bit and I will say, I hear your concerns, but let me take this over. Therapies like internal family systems talk about no bad parts. The part has got a good intention. It wants to protect me from failure and help me, motivate me. But the way it does it is not very useful. So I recognize the good in it. I speak to myself much more compassionately. Compassion-focused therapy techniques also come in handy, distancing techniques and many other things. So we can draw on all those things. But what really kind of helped me initially was thinking about it using analogies and metaphors, which comes more from acceptance commitment therapy. So I'll use one with you and you tell me how it lands with you.
Okay.
So think about a baby that is taking his or her first steps. Usually that's around 1 year old, right? Have you seen a baby just learning to walk? No, not yet. Okay.
Yeah. Not like I've been around kids that are trying, but not kind of.
Yeah. It's very wobbly anyway, very, very wobbly. And the baby is just a beginner, right? So would you say to the baby, you stupid baby, can't you just walk already? Why not?
Because the baby's just trying.
Doing something for the first
Yeah,
time.
the first time. It's giving it a go.
Yeah. So you would say, that's it. You can do it. Here we go. One more step. You hold the baby, you support the baby, and you slowly do that scaffolding and let the baby go. So why would you say this to yourself now as an adult, because imposterism shows when we do something new or challenging and often in a new context. So you are truly the beginner in this new context. You are like a baby, a wobbly baby who is just learning to walk. And I think it's really important to recognize it. So think about it like you can say to yourself, I am not an imposter when I am a beginner at something in some new context. I am just this. I'm a beginner. And that can help you start diffusing the imposter feelings when you just accept where you are. This is what I am. I am just a beginner. And if you notice fear of judgment, for instance, I'd say beat the people who you are afraid will judge you to, we call it inconvenient truth. So once I heard a singer-songwriter was telling a story of kind of finding herself at an event where there were many prominent musicians. And she admired all those musicians. And when they started asking her who she was, whether she had any music on Spotify or iTunes or Apple Music or whatever, she felt the imposter feelings coming in. She felt flooded with shame. But that's when she remembered this importance of being vulnerable, showing up. That's the concept from the research by Brené Brown. And she just said, I just graduated from a music school, and it was quite a prestigious music school. And she said, I'm just a beginner. I don't have any music out there yet. I'm a beginner and I'm here to learn. So can you see, she basically beat them to her inconvenient truth. It was perhaps inconvenient for people that she had no website, no music out, no social media accounts, no followers. But she realized she was just a beginner, not an imposter.
To kind of, I suppose, owning that beginner.
That's it.
Beginnerness rather than fighting it.
Yeah.
I think,
and actually people really respond very positively. And she was talking in this interview how people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. You are so fresh. You have this enthusiasm. You remind us of how we were at the beginning. And people were really supportive. Many people gave her contact details to help her out. Okay, so recognizing that you are a beginner is really important, because then it means you are not really an imposter. And if we go back to the definition of imposter, not imposter phenomenon, but imposter, Imposter is a person who pretends to be someone
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to deceive
Yeah.
others or have some fraudulent gain. And you are not an imposter in that way, right?
And that reminds me of two things, but I think the one thing that I think I've got better over the years is when someone asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, is saying that I don't know. I
Mhm.
think that when I was younger in my career, I'd feel like I have to have all the answers, and that used to make me feel, if I didn't know, that would make me feel like an imposter because, well, I should know these things. Like, why don't I know these things? And I
Mhm.
think as I've developed, I've become a lot more comfortable with saying, "Oh, I don't know," and yeah, going looking up or finding out the information afterwards. But sitting with that
Yeah.
discomfort of saying that,
Very important, and I think it's such a trap for novice therapists. I experienced that too, like wanting
mm,
to give the right answer, and often by not saying I don't know and going
mm,
to check, you might give the wrong answer, and then
mm,
it's much more difficult to get yourself out of that hole that you dug yourself into, right? So
mm,
certainly much more relevant and important to say, yeah, I don't know.
mm,
And also, like in any field, in the field of psychology, clinical psychology, therapy, everything moves quickly. That's
mhm,
one of the reasons why I love supervising on doctorate in clinical psychology, because I stay fresh, and those young new trainees, fresh, they research new things with new
mm,
methodologies, and it's fascinating. So we cannot be expert in everything, and we cannot be expert even in our field without updating our knowledge and
mm,
gaining CPD. So saying I don't know is really important, and
mm.
not pretending that you know something, that can be very damaging.
Yeah. But I think it took that confidence for me to be able to say that.
Mm.
Yeah, and the other thing that made me think about it was when I learnt to snow ski, like the frustration that I felt towards myself because I just couldn't get it and I kept falling over it, but it was that judgment towards myself. And
Yeah.
when you were saying about your name, I don't know if you heard me, but I call mine Miss Trunchbull from the film Matilda.
All right.
I don't know why, but that just sticks in my head. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of my labeling of that critical voice, that part when it comes in, to label it as that, and then that helps me to take that step back, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We've spoken about obviously how to help ourselves if we're experiencing it, but are there any positive aspects to feeling these feelings or anything that they can teach us?
Yeah, and I already touched upon this.
Mm,
Just recognizing that the intention, that the
mm,
feelings are showing up because there is a part of us that wants to protect us from failure.
mm,
That sometimes it's failure or judgment or criticism, right? And as we go through life, we collect those experiences, right?
mm,
Even when people mean very well, and I hear this from performing artists a lot, like, are you sure you can do it? It's such a difficult career, maybe you shouldn't do it, right?
mm,
Raised eyebrows, really? You going into musical theater or something like that?
mm,
And it can be really damaging. Okay.
mm,
So when even if it's a well meant comment, like for instance, there was pressure for me to be a lawyer. Thank God
mm,
I'm not one. My father was a lawyer. My stepsister is a lawyer. So there was an expectation to be a lawyer. And,
mm,
it can be difficult, like people saying to you, oh, you should just follow the path or it would be easier for you than starting something
mm,
completely new, like
mm,
psychology. Are you sure you are made for it? Are you sure you want to sit with clients day in, day out? And then you start first doubt yourself very subtly, and then
mm,
it keeps kind of layering on and on. So yeah, I have my blanket here. So it's like, I like the analogy of the blanket, right? It's, you just keep putting layers and layers and
yeah,
layers, right? Because you're afraid of failure and judgment. But for me, it's really recognizing that yes, that blanket might be useful when it's
mm,
really cold, horrible and rainy out there and where the conditions are not right for me. Then
mm,
I need that protective layer.
mhm,
That's when kind of maybe imposterism can be a little bit helpful. But then you need to recognize that when it's sunny and hot like it is here for me today, I don't need the blanket, right? I can throw it away. So that's another analogy that I like using with those feelings. Certainly there is a positive,
mm,
but the execution tends to be really poor.
mm,
And I also want to say imposterism often links with perfection. And I
Okay.
think perfectionism, as we know, can be really a difficult thing to challenge. And I like to think about perfectionism as my enemy. I like to go to battles with my enemy because we will never be perfect, unattainable. And it was Salvador Dalí who said this thing, and I love this thing. It just helps me so much. Have no fear of perfection. You will never reach it.
I like that.
If Salvador Dalí said that, I can say it too.
Yeah.
So yeah, even though you might have a tiny benefit and sometimes it can feel right to kind of hide or avoid or protect yourself from something, generally, I think you need to bracket it as a part of yourself. Learn that you can work with it.
And I
You
think
can overcome those feelings.
I definitely like since we've been like working together, that idea of seeing the different parts, I find that so useful because instead of seeing it as this is who I am, no, that's a part of me. And I've definitely used that in practice and to get people to see the different parts. I haven't done my IFS training, but I'm using kind of bits like the language to help to make sense of things. And I definitely can see them.
It's not a new language. Okay, it's nicely packaged in IFS, but actually it's been used in schema therapy and in many
Yeah.
other kind of therapies, just ego states, you know, it's not a new concept. So yeah, that can be very useful. What I find the most useful really is kind of the concept of developing psychological flexibility.
Okay.
And, you know, when you think about those parts, you can think about, you know, there is a part of you that really wants to go for it, challenge yourself, go for something, I don't know, bold or important. Like you said, maybe skiing, you know, scary if you haven't skied and you decide that you really want to do it. And there is a part of you that wants to withdraw and protect, right? So you are kind of experiencing a tug of war. It's acknowledging there is a part of me that is pulling me to avoid or disconnect or maybe overdo, over-prepare, whatever it is, right? And there is a part that just wants to go for this new, exciting, challenging thing. Okay. And what helps me is thinking about my values. So real success is consistent choosing of valued action, not the outcome, you know. That's why I prefer thinking about vision and the journey rather than specific goals.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we don't have control over some outcomes. For instance, I might not have control over whether I land a specific job or specific contract, but I can try, right? So in that way, values are different from goals because values cannot be kind of ticked off of that list. So you don't finish. Values are guiding you all the time. And it helps you to persist through setbacks. So for instance, if I have a particular value, I can reconnect with it. And we can do a little exercise, which comes from the book. I can't remember the author, but Imposter No More, I think, or Imposter Syndrome No More, something like that. Okay. So I'll use you as an example. So imagine that, well, obviously you are going to die one day, unfortunately. You're a human being, but you are going to die. Okay. So imagine that they are putting a stone on your grave. And do you want the stone to say, "Here lies Kelly. She was skilled at playing it safe to avoid rejection, failure, and imposterism"?
No.
Or maybe you would prefer, "Here lies Kelly. She was skilled at being vulnerable," maybe saying that, "I don't know,"
Yeah.
and choosing to risk rejection and failure in service of living boldly and pursuing meaningful opportunities.
Yeah. So that sounds better.
So can you see we are tapping here into the value? My value is to live full life, to live boldly, to pursue those really meaningful, maybe very challenging, but meaningful opportunities for myself. Here we do enter this zone of internal conflict that we need to recognize. There is a part of us that wants to stride forward, to do those exciting things, to challenge, to take on new things, right? And there is a part of us that wants to hold back and play it safe. And this is because that part wants to avoid criticism, judgment, disapproval. Like, you know, we are here today showing up on YouTube. We might get critical remarks for this conversation, right? So is it stopping us? No. There will always be haters or commenters or people who won't like, I don't know, for instance, my accent. Obviously, even though I've been in England for over 20 years, I still have my accent. So, somebody might not like my voice or whatever it is, but it won't stop me because my value of doing, like sharing knowledge specific here is much more important than the part that says, oh no, don't show up on YouTube, don't do those interviews because somebody will criticize you. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think that is, I suppose, like using like social media as an example, that at the beginning I never showed my face, I never spoke on camera. It was all just kind of like just pictures and words and things like that. And then kind of over time, it was just like, as you said, like my value is about sharing knowledge and trying to make things that we talk about in the therapy room accessible to other people to explore. And I think that you're completely right that even though there are sometimes mean comments or things that aren't very nice, but you don't allow that to stop you. But that could stop some
Absolutely.
people.
It could, and
Yeah.
that's very sad, and that's when kind of imposter phenomenon kind of wins, right?
Mm,
And that's why we need to think about values and those strategies that we mentioned. But I also
mm,
want to say that sometimes it's okay to give in to the part that doesn't want to show up.
mm,
So the way I think about it, it's kind of normal and natural to feel that internal conflict. We feel it pretty much every day. Like, for
mm.
instance, I had a conflict this morning to get up and do this interview with you or just stay in bed because I'm tired, right?
Yeah.
And today I chose to engage and
Mm,
challenge myself. But some other day, maybe I would go into the value or respect my value of having enough sleep and having enough rest, or going on a holiday, or sometimes I just give up on my work and go for a cold water swim in the river nearby us,
yeah.
because my value of self-care and my
Mm,
value also of being close to nature might come to the fore.
mm,
And so we kind of make those decisions day on day. And this
mm,
is what we call psychological flexibility. It's not that,
mm,
okay, if I feel like imposterism feelings are coming over me and taking over, I need to always challenge and plow through and, push through. No, sometimes I might say, okay, maybe I just step back. Maybe this is a bit too much for me right now. And that's fine too.
And again, with that, I definitely can resonate because it's something that's probably taken me quite a while to learn about, that I don't need to deserve time to rest. I always used
Yeah.
to feel like, oh, I'll get this done and
Yeah.
then I'll relax. And again, that's been a learning journey for me, I think, in terms of like honoring that value of that, yeah, I just want to sit there and like knit or like read or something. And I would say only probably in the last year, I've gone back to reading. I used to read a lot, like at night time. In the last year, I've gone back to that because I always used to be like thinking, oh, I need to be doing things like right up until I didn't have that like wind down time really. And now I think that has now become more habitual, that I recognize how valuable it is for me. I enjoy it and it helps to give myself that rest rather than thinking, oh, I need to work on this just before I go to bed, which isn't like
Yeah. Yeah.
good for the long term.
Exactly that. And I just thought about one more thing that might be very useful to people listening.
Mm,
So, we said that imposterism is linked to self-doubt.
mm,
And when you think about self-doubt, you get literally flooded with thoughts. And all those thoughts are about yourself, right?
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I am not good enough. I'm going to fail. I will be judged. I will be found out. You name it.
yeah.
There is so many of them. And it's kind of good to think about humility for a moment, because humility isn't thinking less about yourself.
Mm.
It's thinking about yourself less.
Say that again.
I'll say it again.
Yeah.
Humility isn't thinking less about yourself.
Yeah.
It's thinking about yourself less.
Okay. Yeah.
So instead of I, maybe
Yeah.
think about other people and what you can bring to them by showing up. Okay.
Mm,
So for me, it's arrogance that is thinking about yourself more.
mhm.
Being vulnerable and of service to others may be actually a good way out of imposterism. Again, I heard that somewhere and I really like that, right?
Mm.
It's not about thinking less about yourself. But when
Mhm.
we think less, we spend less time thinking about ourselves, it's much better for us. So shifting that attention from I,
Yeah.
and thinking about what I am here for. Who am
Yeah.
I here for? What is my purpose? Whom I'm serving? So if I don't show up, who is going to miss out on
Yeah.
this knowledge that I've got to share, on my skills or practical exercises? So, thinking about the purpose, like if I'm here to provide knowledge, if I don't show up, if I don't come to this interview with Kelly today, maybe people will miss out on understanding what actually imposterism is. So, there might have been a part of me who wanted to hide and like, oh, am I good enough? Have I read all the 10,000 books on imposterism to be able to talk about it, right? But actually, I think I'm sharing some things that you are connecting and also learning, and other people hopefully will learn from. And that's a value and that's important. I'm kind of thinking less about myself and more about what other people may gain. And I say this to performing artists as well, because you need to think about why you are here. You are providing entertainment or emotional connection or emotional release, intellectual stimulation, life experiences, concerts or acting or whatever it is. So people would be poorer if you didn't show up, like intellectually or emotionally or not wise, right?
And I did want to touch on, because obviously you've been working a lot with like performing artists in the recent years. So I don't know, just anything to kind of share about that work, that if anyone is listening that is in that field, that would be useful for them to know within this like conversation.
In what sense?
I don't know, just because we've been talking about it a lot. And I was just wondering if there's anything that is particularly, I suppose all the things that we've spoken about could be used
Yeah,
for
they are
anyone
all
listening.
applicable.
Yeah.
As I said, I have that interactive quiz on my website that anyone can do. And that also then leads into webinar that or masterclass that I did on the topic of imposterism, specifically performing artists, and that received a really good feedback. So if anyone wants that recording, then I can share with them. They can again sign up through my website. But I think for performing artists, really thinking about that they are there providing a platform, giving audience what the audience truly wants and needs, and thinking about, what an amazing job to do. People come to theater or concert hall or wherever we are, to the cinema, to be transported out of their lives, right? Into a different dimension. They are there to be entertained. They are not there to catch me out or look out for my errors. I mean, there are some critics who are there for this, and I've heard some horror stories, but generally the audience isn't.
No.
So just thinking about the audience more than yourself.
Okay. So again, switching from that I to, yeah.
Absolutely. And when you think about what you said about the difficulty of saying don't know, and how it took you a while, it took me a while. In the same vein, I'm thinking about performances that I'm most connected with. A few years ago, I was in a theater for a concert, and it was with a soloist. So everything rides on her. She's standing alone on the stage, and she lost her words, and she just stood there in silence, and she said, "Sorry guys, I just lost track of words and tune. Give me a moment." Just turned around for a moment, composed herself, came back. People really cheered, clapped, and encouraged her. And, I remember that much more than any other performance. It was so beautiful. It was so vulnerable, and people really got behind her. People connected with her. People talked to her after the performance in a way that they often don't do after other ones. Also in a local theater where I volunteer, so it's a small venue and artists can interact with the audience after. And I can tell you, this artist interacted or was interacted with much more than any other artists when I was on a volunteering shift.
But
So
again,
again,
it's
the
just showing
power
that
of
human.
vulnerability and
Yeah.
just saying,
Yeah, it's incredible. I suppose really kind of the final point, is there anything that you wanted to add, or any sort of like closing message that you wanted to share?
I think if I could emphasize, taking baby steps, letting yourself be seen the way you are and focus on your audience, whoever the audience is, rather than yourself. That would be the biggest message, thinking about the part that wants to protect you and making a value-based decision where I'm going to head, depending on which value comes to the fore at any particular point. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just being more value-driven, more self-compassionate, and more focused externally on what I'm here to do for other people rather than myself. And that should help quite a lot.
Yeah. And when you're saying that, the thing that kept, I don't know if you've seen the film Finding Nemo with the seagulls and all they keep going, mine.
Ages ago.
When you were saying that, I just kept hearing the seagulls. So yeah, I really like that.
I see. Okay. I should watch it again.
Yeah, it's just the seagulls. And I'll put your website in the notes. But have you got anything coming up that you wanted to share with people that we could let people know about?
I'm going to honor my value of going on rest and holiday. So not imminently, but I will be advertising probably another webinar on imposterism, because it seems to be like an important topic, but also performance anxiety. So that might come towards the end of the summer or September. And apart from imposterism quiz, there is also a very useful set of tools for performance anxiety on my website. So once people kind of sign up to either, they can get the other one as well. So that might be useful. But I generally work with issues around anxiety, trauma, like trauma of rejection, criticism, humiliation. I work one-to-one and I deliver those master classes and programs. But the next iteration is likely to be at the end of the summer, towards autumn.
Okay, perfect. And then what will be the best website for them to find you?
It's really easy to find me beyond the spotlight psychology, specifically for performing artists. But if somebody is listening and I don't work only with performing artists, my other more clinical website is expansionpsychology.com. So I'll send you both links. And I work with a lot of people, not only performing artists.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've definitely got some takeaways from that. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me again. Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Bye.